welcome back to yet one more Rockabilly Guitar Gene Vincent Cliff Gallup episode. Well, some years ago I tried to join a band and that didn't end up as a success story. So they were positioning themselves as a rockabilly band but wanted to stay, as they were saying, on softer and mellower side, kind of crossing borders with cool jazz. How can rockabilly cross borders with cool jazz? Swing, yes, bebop, why not? But cool jazz, think of Stan Getz. Rockabilly and Stan Getz, so definitely it's way too soft and mellow. So I asked them, guys, could you provide me any kind of reference just to listen to? And they told me, Nash, listen to Gene Vincent. He sounds really smooth, soft and mellow. And I said, sorry, for me, Gene Vincent is a pioneer of psychobilly. Catman! Well, obviously it didn't take long before I had to quit the band because of simply being too much rockabilly for a rockabilly band. So here I am, going to teach you to follow my footprints. Let's check it out. Well, there is not much. Basically, there are two licks that Cliff Gallup plays through the song, through the whole song, and then he plays also a short solo based on two more licks. So the first one goes like this. So here I am at 17th fret, sliding all the way down to 4th, and then 5th, 4th, 5th fret. First and second strings. And by the way, I'm using fingers of my right hand because I have an impression Cliff did the same. Yeah, and actually I like this kind of sound better than if I was playing it like this with the pick. That was with the pick and now with fingers. And now for the reference, this is how does this lick sound with delay. And then there is a variation of this lick that I believe that was Cliff Gallup's mistake. He played it only once like that, but that was really a cool mistake. So if you happen to play this song, I would suggest to playing it more than once. So it seems like he fails to get to 17th fret once and instead gets to 16th. Then lick number 2. The second one, pretty much the same idea, but we are starting to slide from 5th fret, first and second string. And then the same motion between 4th and 5th frets, but this time on 2nd and 3rd strings. So, which makes it kind of this, a part of this A minor chord. And by the way, there are also a few variations, so sometimes Cliff plays this slide really short, but other times he slides all the way down almost to open first and second strings. And now adding delay sounds like this. And now solo. We have two licks in the solo. First and second strings. So 5th fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 8th fret, 5th fret, 3rd, 5th, open strings. And there is also slide to that note to that double stop on 8th fret. Adding delay. a second lick, which is pretty much the same but on the low E string, 6th string. Also observe that Cliff Gallup was sliding up into this A on 5th string, 6th string, 5th fret. Now adding delay. And that was it. So this is probably the easiest Cliff Gallup's guitar part ever. However, the actual magic comes from slapback delay. So let's talk about it. Well, you see, I have a pedal, but the craziest thing is that those kids did all of this stuff back in 1956, when there were no pedals yet. So how did they do that? Well, as you remember, they were recording onto a tape, using a tape machine, and a typical tape machine has obviously a recording head, but then there is also a playback head placed really a few centimeters after the recording head, and that was normally used for a sound engineer to monitor what's getting recorded on the tape. And probably at some point there was a guy, I would really like to know his name, because he was actually the inventor of delay. So one of those sound engineers in the studio thought that instead of using it for monitoring, he could just take signal of that playback head and feed it into a separate, not a separate track. It wasn't even multi-track yet, probably, but into at least a separate input on the mixing console and to mix it with the main guitar signal. And that's how delay was born. Now, if we try to map that setup onto our typical modern days delay pedals knobs settings, which are delay time, delay mix or blend, and feedback, well, there was one single playback head, meaning one single repeat, so feedback should be all the way down. And by the way, on this pedal, on this one, I don't even have that feedback knob, because this emulates exactly that. So two tape recorders, one single repeat, one single delayed signal. Then delay time was dictated by the placement of that playback head and the tape speed during recording. And I have found actually a way to measure that. It was pretty much close to 120 milliseconds. And that's what I have dialed using my blend knob here. By the way, 120 milliseconds is pretty close to duration of 8th note in the tempo of Catman, so you can do that math yourself. Catman's tempo is 260 beats per minute, 1 minute is 60,000 milliseconds, and from that you can calculate. Now, the only delay settings that they were able to actually manipulate and dial in was volume, blend, mix. And if you look at my blend knob here, well, that's somewhat past noon, which on this particular one corresponds to delayed signal being a tiny bit louder. Not quieter, a tiny bit louder than the main guitar signal. And now I also have yet one more device here, which in fact is a compressor. So it's a very mu tube compressor, variable mu tube compressor, exactly the type of compressor that they had back in 1956 in the studio. And why do I have that? Because guitar's attack is kind of sharp. I believe if you think of how did they record, by the way, during the recording guitar was running into the amp was picked up by the microphone was going on into the mixing console, and probably then one of the first units that the signal was hitting was a variable mu tube compressor inside that mixing console. And what does it do? It kind of softens the attack, because without compression the attack is too sharp and sound gets with slapback, it gets a little bit too messy. If you look at my settings here, you will see that I have very fast attack and medium fast release, so that to capture exactly the transient of my guitar sound, and then very low threshold, so kind of each and every note gets compressed, but then this compression ratio setting is kind of low. So I started with ratio dialed all the way at noon, and then worked it a little bit down, a little bit dialed it a little bit back, so that it gets compressed but not too much. So let's hear all of this goodness in practice. So this is my dry signal. This one, by the way, has also tape saturation. So let's switch its tape saturation part on and see what happens. So in reality it thickens it a little bit up and adds a bit more gain. Then delay. And finally, compression. And that was it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.